Now we'll look at some more trigonometric equations, but instead of angles between 0 and 360, we are looking at angles between minus 180 and positive 180. And we have to kind of make a little tweak with our cast diagrams. So we'll look at a question. So cos of x is equal to 0.6. So we started off in the same way. We get an acute angle by doing inverse cos of 0.6. And we're going to draw two acute angles on our cast diagram. But our cast diagram is labelled differently because of the fact that it's not between 0 and 360 anymore. We're looking at angles between minus 180 and 180. So the cast diagram is the same in that we have C here, A, S, and T, and that doesn't change. And the quadrants where cos, sine, tan are positive, they don't change. But what does change is the fact that we start at 0 here, up to 90, then to 180. But that's all the positive angles, because we have minus 180 here and minus 90 there. And this is all because we use the cast diagram in a different manner for negative angles. So whenever we are looking for positive angles between 0 and 180, we are going to look at the angles made in the first two quadrants by going anti-clockwise. And if we're looking for angles that are negative, so between 0 and minus 180, we're going to look at the second two, the third and fourth quadrants. We're going to measure this time clockwise. So what I have here on the right hand side is for positive angles, we start at 0 and go anti-clockwise until we get to here and stop. For negative angles, we start at 0 and we go clockwise until we get to minus 180 and stop. So for this question, our acute angle is 53.13. It's a positive question, so we're going to draw that acute angle where cos is positive, and cos is positive in this quadrant and the last quadrant, first and last. So we draw from the horizontal an acute angle of 53.13 here and here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start at 0 and I'll look for the positive angles first of all. So the angles between 0 and 180. So we start at 0 and we go anti-clockwise until we get to our angle. And this angle is just 53.13, and that's one of our answers. Then we go back to 0 as we would do in the other questions, but instead of going in the same direction, we're going to be going clockwise. And we're going to notice that the more we go around, the more negative we get until we get to our limit of minus 180. So in this particular question, our angle here is 53.13 degrees, but because we're going from 0 and becoming more negative, our answer is minus 53.13. So there's our two solutions. And those two solutions are between minus 180 and 180. So looking at another question, notice that this one is a negative, but we still do the inverse sine of 0.34 and we get our acute angle. We get our acute angle and we draw it in the quadrants where sine is negative, and that is in the third and fourth. Now because this question is looking for angles between minus 180 and 180, notice that we have 0 here, 90 here, and 180. And then 0, minus 90 should be here, and minus 180. So let's look at where our positive angles are. From 0 all the way around to 90, all the way around to 180 and stop, there are no positive angles. So let's look where our negative angles are. From 0, getting more negative, there's an angle of minus 19.88. Back to 0, clockwise again, from 0 to minus 90, getting more and more negative until we get to here. Now, minus 180 would be where it stops. So what we're going to do is we're going to take minus 180 and add on our acute angle to get minus 160.12. Another example this time was tan. So a positive, so we'll do inverse tan of 2, and we'll sketch that acute angle where tan is positive, and tan is positive in the first and third quadrant. We have 0, 90, 180, 0, minus 90, minus 180, depending on what direction we're going. So our first angle, let's look at the positives. Let's start at 0, follow the angle round till we get to here, and that is 63.43. There's no more positive angles there, so we'll look at the negatives. Start at 0, getting more and more negative, on to minus 90. We stop short of minus 180. So what we'll do is we add on 63.43 to minus 180. And our second angle is minus 116.57. And the last question I'm going to look at is a more complex question, because we don't just have an x here. We have tan of 5x plus 22 is equal to minus 0.34. But what we're going to do is we're just going to call whatever's in the brackets there, call it y, and then start off the question like we would normally. So this is a negative, just be careful then. We're going to do inverse tan of 0.34 and we get an acute angle. We're going to draw that acute angle where tan is negative because of this. So our acute angle of 18.78 goes where tan is negative, and that is in here and here. Now look at the limits of our question. It says where x is between minus 36 and plus 36, and the reason why it's between minus 36 and plus 36 is because inside this bracket we have 5x. So if we were to multiply them both by 5, we would get minus 180 and 180. So our limits, or our cast diagram, will just be as above, 0 to 90 to 180, and then 0 to minus 90 to minus 180. So our acute angles are drawn in the quadrants where tan is negative. Let's look at our positive angles. So from 0 all the way past 90, we get to 161.22. So that's all the only positive angle. Then let's look at our negatives. From 0 getting more negative, we stop at minus 18.78. So these are the two values for y. But remember that we swapped y for 5x plus 22. So we let that equation of y be equal to what we found here from the cast diagrams. And then we get our two values of x, which you will see fit in to our limits.